To week one of our new feature bootcamp session. This is the course that will take you all the way from idea to finished draft of a brand new feature script in 8 weeks. We had our week 0 class, which is like the prologue or like the pre-intro, which you can find a recording of, and also recordings of many of our other intro classes on YouTube. And if you're watching on one of our other sites like Twitch, Twitter, or Facebook, you should come join us on Discord, which is where we host all of these classes and where you can actually speak up, raise a hand, and participate in these classes if you want to share your log lines, participate in the discussions, or just join us for our many workshops and events. You can find all of that at scriptcamp.net, so if you've not already signed up, you can go here and sign up for unlimited membership if you want to get full access to every single class on every server that we have. And if you are subscribing yearly, you do save 40% on that. We have over 100 hours of classes like this every single month. You can stick around for just the free public ones if you want, like the week 0 and week 1 of most classes, which are going to be totally open to everyone. But if you'd like to continue all the way to the end of the course, you should sign up, because that includes access to every server that we have in our Skill Camp group and every event on every channel. We are part of Skill Camp, which includes many other servers, which you can see here. We also have WordCamp, which is our second biggest one. We just hit 500 members on WordCamp, so we'd be glad to have you guys over there for our novel-focused classes. That's running every Saturday from 12 to 2 p.m. We have a bunch of other servers which you can see as well, including Film Camp for filmmaking, Toon Camp for animation, Code Camp for coding, Lingo Camp for language learning, where we have Spanish language classes once a week, and we have plenty of other stuff being added all the time. So we would love to have you over here in our various different Skill Camp servers. Again, your membership subscription does give you access to everything on every server, so you don't have to get every server separately. So just go to scriptcamp.net, and if you sign up, you will be able to join us for absolutely anything going on any of those places. So this is just a tiny bit about me that I won't go way too into, but I've been writing full-length scripts for about 12 years, have been rep since 2017, wrote an episode of Creepshow back in 2019, have had a few scripts set up in town since then, mostly in the horror, thriller, and action kind of world, and I teach the boot camps and weekly Writers Lab. So we have multiple times a week where you can come to table reads, where folks here on the server can submit their scripts to be read by the group and to get feedback from everybody. Our main 3 times are Sunday 2 p.m., Tuesday 11 a.m., and Saturday 2 a.m., which is the international time slot intended to be accessible to UK, Australia, Asia, the rest of the world besides the US. Normally all of our times are listed in Pacific time because we are based in Los Angeles. On WordCamp, which is our novel server, we also have 2 times a week readings of your novels, short stories, poems, and nonfiction, up to 2,000 words, which you can find Saturday 7 p.m. and Thursday 10 a.m. Both of those are Pacific time. Here's the new schedule of the boot camps. We have TV boot camp, which which already started and is running Sundays 10 to noon. It's okay to join that one anytime. I would recommend usually if you're going to join a boot camp, you should do it before the second class if you can, just to make sure that you're going to be able to keep up, just considering that these are such a abbreviated, condensed time frame to write something this complex in. So it's always okay if you fall a little behind. You can always carry it over to the next boot camp if you want. That's one of the benefits of being a member, is that you can have full access to every course. So you fall a little behind, you can always put it on pause, take a little break, and come back to it later if you want to in the next boot camp. So Fridays is going to be featured boot camp, running 6 to 8 starting today. We had one week 0 class previous to this, but this is the official week 1, and we're going to be running the next 8 weeks, so up through the end of January. 90-day novel boot camp, that's running Saturdays 12 to 2, and that also is running towards the end of January. And you are free to join anytime, but you definitely won't be able to keep up with the milestones of the class if you join now. That's totally fine. You don't have to do that, but the idea is that they're going to finish a complete book by end of January. And then we have weekly Writers Lab, which is every Saturday from 4 to 6. It's like office hours that you can come in and ask whatever questions you have, whatever topics you'd like to hear more about. You can bring screenplays, fiction, outlines, questions, or anything else you're working on that you would just like an outside opinion on. That is for unlimited members, and you can find that every Saturday on Script Camp from 4 to 6 p.m. So thank you guys so much for joining us. If you'd like to attend the rest of the classes in this course beyond just today, definitely go to our website and sign up for membership. And then we would be glad to see you on any of these many events happening on our different servers. There's a poll that that Nacho will share in the chat, which you can find in just a moment. And this poll indicates If you're interested in signing up for one of our many different classes or courses, there will be a little number you can click on that says, yes, I'm interested, and you will get instant access to all of the member-exclusive chat channels. Or if you have questions or you're not sure or things like that, those are also options on that same poll. You should see that in the chat within just a minute. If you're looking for the chat, you can find that by mousing over the Classroom channel on the left-hand side of your Discord window. Find that small white word bubble that says Open Chat and click on it, which should open the chat on the right-hand side of your screen. So there's the chat, or there's the poll now. Feel free to click number 1 if you're interested in signing up at any time, and you will get the permission tag to access our member-exclusive chat channels. If you're not sure or have questions, there are also options for that. All right, let's look at the overview. So last week we started with kind of a broad look at the entire 8-week process, and we started to chip away at those log lines. So the log line does not have to be totally done right now, but ideally if you came to last class, you got some feedback on it and were able to make some of those early adjustments that will allow you to ideally finish by the end of this weekend, have your log line totally done by the end of tomorrow, and then as of now you will be working hard, writing your script and working your way through the whole process in basically this order. You start with logline, so that's today, as we're going to try to finish up with loglines. You move ahead to sketchbook, and you're going to fill out as much of the sketchbook as you want. Sketchbook being just a blank document to keep all of your notes and research material for this one project. Every one of your projects should have a different sketchbook, because that is where you will be keeping all of your ideas for characters, lines of dialogue, scenes, locations, rules of the world, or anything else that seems relevant to you, including links to pictures or links to articles or videos or anything else like that that helps you figure out what is going to be in your movie. And then from here on, we are going to be doing outlining next week. That's outlining 1 on December 8th. I've gone a little blurry, haven't I? I think my webcam lost focus somehow. That's okay. Oh, there we go. Got it back. So next week, December 8th, that's on structure and outlining. So we're going to be figuring out what happens on every page of the movie before we actually start writing the pages for the movie. So you don't have to download your screenwriting software until halfway through the class, but as of that midpoint, you will have to download either. We recommend things like Arc Studio or Writer Duet, which both have great free versions for you to try out. But until then, you're just going to be using things like Google Docs in order to do all the pre-writing and figuring out what happens in each act of the movie. Then we're going to get more and more specific as we move on, and you're going to expand those story beats into what we call the scene cards, which are going to be covered on December 15th. That's when you're going to be able to write out a full paragraph for every scene in the script, along with page numbers, so you know where those are supposed to basically fall in the general trajectory of your plan for how you're going to be writing this thing. And it will be a tool that you will use to really carefully assess your pacing. If you're spending too long on any specific section or maybe rushing through them, then having a really robust and complete set of scene cards will prevent those problems and will ultimately help you separate out that work of figuring out what needs to happen in the movie from actually executing it on the page, which are two kind of different parts of the brain or different skill sets in some ways. And so that's why we try to not be doing both of those at once. You don't want to be halfway through the script and then you're like, I don't know what's supposed to happen next or how to get to the next moment. And so by having that really clear, really detailed set of scene cards, you will never have that problem. You will always know what happens next in the scene, and worst comes to worst, if you can't figure out how to make a scene work, you can always skip it and come back to it later because you know what's supposed to come next. Week 4 is when we start pages. So we say go to pages, meaning you will actually go from pre-writing and outlining to writing scenes and dialogue and everything else. So that's going to be December 22nd is when you're going to actually start the script right before Christmas there. And you're going to be from then on writing about 20 to 25 pages a week, so about 4 or 5 pages on just weekdays for the next 4 weeks after that, with the script being finished by January 26th. All right, that's the look at everything coming up next. We do have the holidays in the middle, so that often does give us a little bit of extra buffer time in the middle, so you will probably end up... We've already had a little extra time because of Thanksgiving, so we had 2 weeks since the last class, so you've had that extra week in there in order to get that log line down as much as you can and to be filling out that sketchbook with all of the research and early work that you need to do to start building up what is ultimately a pretty complex piece of machinery. A script is like a pretty complicated, long document that it's not easy to write if you have never written one before. And even if you have written them before, it's still not always easy. So don't expect this to be easy. Even if you've watched a million movies in your life, you're like, I think I could do that. I've seen movies before. Don't expect it to be effortless. This is a lot of work. it's not always fun, and you're not always going to have that little inspiration fairy sitting on your shoulder. But you don't need to rely on that, because you need to sort of train yourself not to need this to be fun and entertaining, and not to need to have that kind of inspiration or that spark of excitement driving you. You have to kind of start approaching this a bit more methodically, plan out what you're going to do, be consistent in your output of page goals per week, and be writing 3-4 scripts a year at least. I would hope every couple months you should be trying to write a feature script if you are trying to become a feature writer. Okay, so that's the look at everything coming up. Let's look at just the overview of this class on its own. So we did a couple introductions last week. We're not going to spend way too much time on those today. We're probably just going to recap a little bit quickly what we did last time, because there's so many ways for you to recap those basic things. So many, we must have hundreds of videos of just those essential first couple class things at this point. So we're not going to spend too long on introductions and things like that. We're going to go forward a little quickly, because I would much rather spend the time looking at your revised log lines from last week and helping to nudge you in the right direction, so that ideally by the end of this weekend you will be able to finish that up. If not today, then by the end of tomorrow. And you can always ask more questions in, for instance, lab. Lab is tomorrow from 4 to 6. So if you feel like you are not making any headway on your log line, or you are completely lost as to what to do, or you have tied yourself in a knot, confusing yourself in some way, then tomorrow from 4 to 6, I would come to lab if you're a member, and then you will be able to ask whatever questions you have and just get unstuck, which is what lab is really for. It's to get you unstuck. Thank you for sharing that link, Joel. So that is tomorrow, 4 p.m. Pacific time, and every Saturday at that same time slot. So let's look at the overview. We will start with a couple of that recap of the ground rules and basics, and then we will be posting log lines pretty early, less than halfway through the class this time. Wait until I tell you to, though, just so we don't lose everything. If you post it too early, then it's like we have to dig through all the comments to find it again, so just don't post it till I ask you to. But less than halfway, maybe 30-40 minutes in, we will share those log lines and be able to look at people who shared last week and give them another round of feedback on their updated log line. Or if you're just joining us and you want to share a log line for the first time, that would also be fine, and you can spend the next couple days trying to finalize that if you'd like to catch up with the course. Or if you're just joining for just this and you want to just get an opinion on your log line, you could also share that today if you want to. This is such a harsh light on me, isn't it? I feel like a ghost. So I do have to, my dad is visiting from out of town. He just arrived at my place, so I do have to let him in. If Nacho, if you wouldn't mind taking over for just a couple minutes, I do have to help him in and help him get settled here. But I will be back very soon. If you could just take these first few slides, or recap the ground rules and just the basics. Are you there, Nacho? Oh, Nacho, we got no voice from you. Maybe he will reconnect. That's okay. He should be back in just a moment.
Can you hear me now?
Yep, we got you now.
Okay, yeah. I'll just kind of go over some of the basic stuff. If you don't mind just leaving that previous slide up or whatever. Yeah.
This one?
There you go.
Sure. I'll just leave it on this for now. I'll just run off and help my dad. Go ahead.
Sure.
Okay, I'll be back in just 2 minutes. Thanks, guys.
Okay. So welcome everybody. So while Connor is kind of like helping his dad, I'm just gonna go over some of the basics, like basically just kind of like if you're going to continue with the boot camp, you want to use like a real first name or something that sounds like a first name. Doesn't have to be your actual name, but just to get feedback and participate. It's going to be not convenient to just like, hey, thank you so much for that helpful feedback, Master Chief 420 or whatever, right? So, and some other things to keep in mind, probably you want to choose either a brand new project or a major rewrite. So if you're doing a rewrite for the bootcamp, if this is a very small rewrite, like just extra passes, it probably won't line up with, the like kind of pacing of the class. But you're looking for something where you're really going back and looking at the structure again, and kind of following along with the steps of the boot camp. You probably want to avoid time travel, true stories, anthologies, adaptations, anything that requires a lot of research. We've had a lot of people try to do time travel projects during the class, and they had a lot of difficulty. There's just a lot of complexity to time travel. So historical, maybe if you've already done a lot of the research and but generally it's anything that is just kind of, might take longer than this 8-week session. So let's just open it up to everyone. Maybe tell us a little bit about yourself. Have you written screenplays before? Anyone want to share a little bit about yourself? Is anyone planning to do a rewrite for the bootcamp? And you can raise your hand if you want to come up on the stage, or you can just type in the chat. So Gabrielle says, so we have actually two we had a different Gabrielle in earlier. Working on the new feature project, still working on the logline. Okay. Yeah, hopefully you have something to share by the end of the class today and get some feedback from Conor. Luke, do you want to tell us a little about your project?
Sure. I've written a lot of pages. I've only written one screenplay. It's not even, I wouldn't even call it that. It was for Zero Draft 30. But I've got a million ideas and a million projects. Basically here to get some pre-writing done. I think I've picked the project. So I've got like a new log line and everything. And yeah, that's where I'm at. Just kind of doing pre-writing. Probably will not do the actual draft until after I'm done with my novel in January, but I'll get halfway there with this.
Yeah.
Bootcamp.
Awesome. Yeah, Luke is also doing the novel bootcamp, which meets on Saturdays. So just to anyone who is considering, trying to do multiple boot camps at once, it's, you're welcome to try to actually complete the projects. You might find it helpful even just to kind of sit in. So for me, I've sat in on like multiple boot camp classes, and I found it helpful even just, sometimes whatever I'm working on, someone else has a problem that's similar to something I've experienced, or, just gets you thinking about stuff. So, yeah, welcome back, Conor.
Hello.
Teague just joined us. So we just started the class. You didn't miss much. We were just kind of going over some of the ground rules for the boot camp. And you can catch up. We do have like a YouTube link, so I'll post that for you in case you want to go back and check it out.
Where'd you leave us, Nacho?
We just went over the first few the ground rule slides.
Oh, great. Okay, so these here?
Yeah.
Up to this one?
Yeah, we didn't do that one.
Okay, great. So if you covered everything, I mean, the basics were just essentially don't do true stories, don't do anthologies, and don't do anything that will require a bunch of extra research for you, because you have a shortened time frame to be writing this, and anything that will be an extra obstacle to you is going to be something you want to avoid for the most part. So just pick something fun and interesting that will keep you excited and coming back for the whole time. Let's go ahead to the sketchbook slide. So if you've not already done this, then you can go to your Google Docs link, and you can just start a new blank Google document. There's often people ask, what is the format for this, or what should be included in this? And there's really no actual necessary format for this. It's kind of just a blank document where you're going to keep all of your necessary research materials and pre-writing for your script before you get started. So there's a couple things that you should include, but besides these things, then whatever you want can go in here. There's no right or wrong answers, but let's look at what you should include. So in the sketchbook at the very top, you want to include at the bare minimum title, genre, logline, and comps. I'll go over what each of these things are really quickly. So title, we know what this is, and if you don't know what your title is, you can just leave it untitled or working title, or make up a placeholder title for now. Genre, you're going to want to limit that to just 2 different things. You don't want to make it feel like a sort of big tasteless soup of nothing by saying it's a rom-com horror western musical or something like that. It's just going to sound like nonsense to us. So try to limit yourself to just 2 different things in that field. We have logline, which is the 1-sentence expression of your idea, usually in the format sort of like when or after inciting incident and adjective protagonist must conflict before stakes. It doesn't always have to be exactly like that, but if you don't know where to start, those are the basic questions that we are looking for the answers to. Then last we have comps, and you can include a bunch of ideas for comps, but ultimately you're trying to whittle that down to just 2. Those are comparable titles that you can sort of compare your movie to. Often a good way to think of that might sort of be the world of the first thing, but with the style, tone, or approach of the second thing. That's not an exact science, but that is just like a place to get going if you're not sure how to do comps. So, at the top of your sketchbook, title, genre, logline, and comps. And when you share today in the chat, make sure to include all of those things at the top. Don't just paste in a logline on its own. We want to know title, genre, and comps as well. Okay, so Luke says he has a sketchbook open already, which is great. I recommend everyone actually do that. So if you are not sure what to be doing during the class time, besides just listening, I would be filling things out in your sketchbook, writing down questions that you have, copying and pasting things in as necessary from your research, and just trying to build out your sketchbook maybe in the other tab, or you can minimize it or whatever you need to do. But as you are going through the class, you should be trying to figure out what the answers to these things are and filling them out as you finish one at a time. So try to fill those out by the end of today if you can. If not, then by the end of this weekend, you should try to have title, genre, logline, and comps pretty much done. And you can always be adjusting these things further as you go. You might come up with different ideas for comps, or a variation on a logline, or any number of other things that might change along the way. And if by the end you need to adjust one or the other, then you can always make those changes later. Okay, so hopefully everyone has made your sketchbooks by now. It doesn't have to be in Google Docs, but it should just be in a very basic blank kind of word processing type document that you can access anywhere. We're going to be working on this, this is an 8-week course. We already did start with our week 0 2 weeks ago, but you should understand that this is going to be a first draft, and it doesn't have to actually be good or mind-blowing or amazing or the thing to start your career. This is really just how you will be practicing writing movies and learning how to organize yourself as you are trying to figure out what is your own process of writing the movie. And what do you personally require? How do you work best? So this is kind of, the goal is not to write a masterpiece by the end of this. It is to have learned a bit more and improved a bit more, and to start putting you on that road towards being a pro screenwriter, because a pro screenwriter is somebody who has finished many, 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 many scripts, not just one single script. Okay, so here's the steps: logline, sketchbook, story beats, scene cards, go to pages. And today we will be going back to logline because we spent so much time on giving feedback last week. If you're doing a rewrite as opposed to a brand new script, you might want to look at it sort of like this. Week 1 would be your feedback and notes document, so you have to get feedback on your own. The feedback is not included for a rewrite in a standard feature course. In the past, we have done rewrite boot camps, and we even have some full videos up of rewriting methods and rewriting classes, so check out our YouTube channel if you want to find more of those. But in any case, if you're doing a rewrite, you might want to think of first week as you getting the feedback and making your notes document, so trying to make a full list of all the thoughts that different readers have had and trying to find the commonalities between those. The things that people have mentioned multiple times are the things that you should ideally pay more attention to. Week 2 is where you will re-outline, so you're going to make an outline for the version of the script that you have, not reflecting the changes that you intend to make, but simply an outline that reflects the document that you ended up with imperfections and warts and everything else. you are going to want to make an outline that allows you to look at the version of the script that you have from very far back. And then you're going to combine those with your notes document to create what I call your revision guide. That's going to be essentially a new outline for your script that's going to include all the changes that you plan to make. And as you work through the script, you're going to be marking that up to keep track of your progress. And you're going to be rewriting from weeks 4 to 8, roughly, more or less. Okay, so feedback and notes. Yeah, I'm not going to get more into this stuff right now. If anyone's doing a rewrite and has more questions about that, feel free to ask. But I think that we're going to emphasize that boot camps are a great place to write something brand new, and you will learn more from writing something brand new, usually, than you will from tinkering with something imperfect and just shuffling the deck chairs around forever and ever. You should write new things in order to learn more, for the most part. It's very rare in screenwriting that you can continue to work on one script until it sells, right? Like, it's a little different from novel writing, where somebody can spend a year on a book and absolutely make it incredible after the course of a year. But there is I would say, a steeper point of diminishing returns when it comes to scripts, and you will, at a certain point, kind of just stop improving it. So you will almost always learn more by writing the next script. You shouldn't be getting stuck on any script for longer than 6 months. If you are stuck, you're not able to finish your scripts in 6 months or less, something is wrong with your process, and you should adjust accordingly. Okay, so we have log lines. Let me just do some basic recaps, then I will maybe look at a few of the log lines we have today. So let's look at some recap info first. So this is kind of what a movie logline often looks like. When or after inciting incident, an adjective protagonist must conflict before stakes. It doesn't always have to be exactly in this format, but these are the things we kind of want to know. Inciting incident is what gets this story going. What is the one event that starts it all? It's usually not the very first thing that happens on page 1 of the movie, but within the first 10 minutes, there is usually a big key event that pushes the plot into motion and forces your protagonist to react and to become active, right? Then we have adjective protagonist. That is describing who your character is in terms of what makes them unique, interesting, or the right person for this story. Meaning that there's multiple ways we could describe almost anyone, right? You could describe somebody as a father, or as a doctor, or as a brother, right? Like, that's the same person that we use 3 different potential nouns for, right? But in terms of how you describe them, that's going to make it feel like there's a journey here. What you're doing is you're working to suggest what that internal journey is that will interweave with the external journey. That's why it's it's a completely different story. It's like, guy has to break out of prison is one movie, right? Guy has to team up with his estranged father, who happens to be his cellmate, to escape out of prison. That is a completely different dramatic arc for that story to take. So that's why you want to really highlight what makes your story interesting and unique, and you want to bring that hook to the forefront and amplify that hook as much as you can. And then we have conflict. That's what your character basically has to do physically in the world to succeed. And that's almost never going to be something purely internal, like they must understand or come to terms with something, or they must grow in a certain way, or they must grapple with something. Those are all purely mental exercises, and we need to know what your character actually has to do in the world. We could always describe somebody as, like, Frodo Baggins, for instance, as, what does he have to do in the story? Well, he must accept his destiny, and he must find strength within himself, right? Okay, yes, that is the internal journey of that character. But ultimately, he needs to go to the other side of the world and throw a ring into a volcano, right? So focus on that, and you will imply the internal journey. You don't have to spell out the internal journey. It should be pretty clear from us, just from the adjective the adjective protagonist must conflict before stakes should make it very clear why your character has to act with a great degree of motivation, with high stakes, meaning if they don't act, something bad will happen. And then we have urgency, meaning they have to do this pretty quickly or on a time frame that is going to lead to this feeling like, a movie, right? If they have the rest of their life to do something, then that is often going to feel less urgent than if they have 2 weeks to do something, for instance. And some genres really do thrive on this sense of urgency. Like, if you're writing a thriller, it has to basically be as urgent as possible. Okay, and stakes. That's what's important to your character. That's what happens if they lose, or else the world will be destroyed, is the pretty much as big as stakes can get, right? Okay, how about the universe will be destroyed? Reality will be destroyed. Those are the biggest stakes we can possibly get. The smallest stakes we can have are, I don't know, or else he will be sad, or something like that, right? And if it feels like the stakes aren't that bad, like if your character will just be mildly disappointed if they don't succeed at their goal, Or often we're going to have this question of, well, can you increase the stakes somehow? Can you change the elements that you have to make this feel more substantial? Okay, so that's the basics of loglines. I'd write that down if you don't already have that on your sketchbook, and you should start trying to figure out how to fit what you have into this basic shape. If you have something way better than this basic shape, then that's okay. You don't have to always use this, but try to answer these questions at the very least. Okay, so a couple more tips on loglines, and then I'll go right into comps, and then I think we'll just probably share right after that. So we're looking for primal stakes that anyone can understand, so life and death, love, friendship, revenge, things like this. Ideas that aren't too big or too small. If it's too big, it feels like, okay, your character has to make an epic journey over thousands of years, right? That's going to maybe feel like not quite a movie, but more of a TV show or a book series or something like that, whereas a movie about a guy that just wants to get a sandwich might feel too small, and like it won't really need to take up 2 hours, depending, unless you have some crazy obstacles in the way of getting that sandwich, right? So too big or too small are the size or the scope of the story. When we're talking about scope, that's what we mean. And we're looking for movies that are about people doing stuff, doing clear, tangible things. So they have an objective that we can look at the screen and we can tell when that thing is done. Even if really what it's at the end of the day, ultimately your coming-of-age movie is about growing up or something like this, right? But growing up is not a tangible objective. Winning a battle of the bands is a tangible objective. You can tell when they've won because they get the trophy and everyone cheers, right? So even if your character, if the reason you wrote the story is to write a story about a kid growing up, but we still, for the purposes of a movie logline, need to understand by what criteria we will understand him as having grown up. And the job of you as a screenwriter is to externalize a lot of that stuff and to come up with these tangible goalposts for otherwise internal character elements, right? Start with something familiar, mix it with something unique, right? Something like what? And people usually say, Inception. People usually say that's a pretty original movie, right? It's Paprika meets Heat, right? Or Paprika meets, maybe not Ocean's 11, James Bond, right? So we an element of the familiar, spy, heist type stories, with an element of the unfamiliar, surreal dreamscapes or dream-like storytelling, right? So you can combine those things together. An element of the familiar, an element of the strange will sometimes just yield a really creative and simply expressed idea. Ideas that are harder to explain are not better. It's in fact harder to capture an audience with a very complex idea rather than a simpler one. We're looking for simple and evocative ideas. That's what really starts to build up this high concept package, is the idea that it's so simple anyone can just hear it and kind of get it right away. Moreover, movies are stories that could only happen in one specific way, and they're almost always covering the most pivotal events in your main character's life so far, even if they don't know it yet, or even if they will have more adventures later. And more than this, your character should feel uniquely suited to the story, meaning that it feels like they are the right one that should go through this. It's not just like when a dude is convicted of a crime, it's like when a human rights lawyer is convicted of a crime. Okay, I'm starting to see why that person would have more reason to want to clear their name, right? Or something like that. It doesn't have, like, that's just a silly example, but you want to make sure you've matched the protagonist to the situation. You've picked somebody that has more to lose, or more at stake, or they care more, or they're more invested. We don't want to make it feel like a recurring series of situations like a TV show. If your logline is something like 4 friends hang out in their apartment in Chicago, that's going to feel more like episodic situations and not like one story that could only happen one specific way. Last, we're looking for a hook, which might be some sense of irony, a new or interesting point of view, some variation or interesting mashup of otherwise familiar elements. All right, you can just look at a couple of my loglines here, some of which I've written and some of which I have not written. I did not write the logline for a hint line here. But in any case, these are one single sentence. It's not always taking that exact form, but I at least will imply the answers to those things, even if I don't include that exact format. So you can feel free to do the same. Always pick your adjective carefully, right? A sensitive boy, a melancholy housekeeper, a desperate assistant, a brash young delivery driver, a cantankerous coachman. Pick your adjective carefully, and don't just pick the first thing that comes to your head. It shouldn't usually feel like you're just describing the genre, right? A grizzled detective must hunt down an elusive serial killer. Well, yeah, all detectives, we expect detectives to be grizzled. It's almost a cliche, right? And we expect serial killers to be elusive. So if you're just picking the first thing that comes to your head, you may not actually be giving us any extra info. Okay, so let's move ahead to comps, and then we will share log lines after this. So comps are a little silly, and it almost feels a little like we're overstepping sometimes to compare your movie to The Godfather or whatever, right? This is not really about quality, but that aside, there's no real reason to comp a bomb, right? You don't want to comp something that everybody hated. So probably comp something that is well known. You don't earn extra points for somebody not knowing what your comps are, so don't pick some obscure Argentinian art house film to comp to, because if they're left going like, I don't get it, then you lose points. You don't gain points. So you want to generally pick stuff that is reasonably critically well liked and came out within the last 10 to 15, 20-ish years. I'll say 20 years, just as a, hard cutoff. And then stuff from the past that is well remembered, like Back to the Future, you can always comp that. I know it's from more than 20 years ago, but it's so much in the public consciousness that you can always comp it. There's nobody who won't know it. If somebody doesn't know a Spielberg movie, that's on them, that's not on you. I know Back to the Future is not a Spielberg movie, but in any case, you get what I mean, right? So if you pick something really, really well known, even if it's from a long time ago, that's usually fine also. But just don't be obscure, don't try to show off. And if you're pitching this movie to people and they sort of start throwing out other comps, sometimes writers get a little bit irrationally upset by that. They'll be like, no, it's not like that at all. I hate that movie that they're comping it to. But it's a sign that somebody is paying attention and engaging with your pitch if they are starting to throw out comps of their own. And you should usually roll with it unless they're like, oh no, this isn't like Morbius, is it? In which case you can be like, no, it's not like that. But if they start being like, oh my gosh, it's like Die Hard on a oil rig, then you can be like, yeah, it's totally like that. That's a sign that they're getting it and that it's working. It's not a sign that it's not working. So comps are a little silly, and it's okay to not exactly be sure which ones to use. You can make a list of 3 or 4 of them to begin with if you want, but ultimately you do want to start reducing this down to just 2 comps. This meets that. It's this with an element of that. It's the world of this with the style, tone, or execution of that. Okay, so we've gone over log lines, comps, and the ground rules. I think we're ready to share log lines, so go ahead and post what you've got. I ideally would like to prioritize those who shared last week to give them that feedback, to give them the extra feedback to make sure that they can finish by the end of today. But I will be covering everybody. It's just that if we get down to the wire in terms of time, I will have to kind of put the people who are getting updated feedback to the front of the line. If we don't get to you, I'm very sorry, but we do have many other opportunities and ways to get feedback on the server. And also, there's always more feature boot camps in the future, so you can always come to the next one. Week 0 and week 1 are always free, so that's 2 entire classes for you to get logline feedback entirely open to the public if you choose to. So you can go ahead and post what you've got in the chat. Thank you guys for sharing those. Make sure to include that title, genre, logline comps. I see that everyone who has shared so far has done that. I think I'm just going to start at the top and start working our way down. If you want to contribute yours to the queue, I will get to them in the order that they were shared. And I'll try to get through them relatively quickly so we have time to do more slides. And also maybe you even have time to adjust it a little bit and do one more round towards the end, potentially. All right, let's get started with Raven. Your movie's called Starstruck, a musical. Great. Hello.
Oh, hello.
Why don't you read out what you have for us?
Okay. The title is Starstruck. The genre is fantasy musical. The logline is, after a wish on a star summons a celestial vagabond, a reserved apprentice must keep her new companion a secret from the kingdom's rulers who see his cosmic powers as evil. The comparisons are Wish meets The Hunchback of Notre Dame.
All right. Interesting. Sounds unique. Thank you for sharing this. So I write musicals as well, mostly for stage. I will just say the idea of writing a spec movie musical is almost impossible, and no one does this, but you can do it if you want to. If you really want to, if this is where your heart is, you're like, this must be a movie, you can absolutely do this. But let me just ask, this isn't based on a play or anything else that you've done in the past, is it?
No, it is not.
Okay.
It's actually largely based on the initial concepts for Wish that Disney was going to use, and then they didn't, and I'm like, that movie needs to exist in some form.
Okay, great. So yeah, this I mean, people don't make spec musicals or buy them or anything else, but that's okay. You can still write this as an exercise or to learn how. I would say if you really want to make this happen in the world, write it as a stage musical first. But that aside, let's just look at what we have here.
Great to know. Thank you for letting me know that.
Yes, they generally do not. There is no one interested in spec movie musicals. It's completely dead. But that's not to say that movie musicals never get made. They're just based on something.
And it can work and stage plays do have musicals then.
Yeah,
cool.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, after a wish on... Yeah, definitely. Okay, let me read back the logline really quick. Okay, after a wish on a star summons a celestial vagabond. That's the part I'm getting tripped up on here. What is a celestial vagabond?
He's basically a kind of character who's essentially like from the stars, who kind of gets summoned to Earth, and he's society, basically.
Is he an angel?
He's kind of a celestial runaway. Not necessarily an angel, really, but he's more of kind of like a cosmic, godlike entity, almost like the genie from Aladdin, in a way.
Okay. So, a wish on a star. Who wished for what?
Oh, the apprentice, who's the protagonist, wished for something to change about her situation, because her society is essentially very like rigid, almost like medieval Dark Ages kind of in tone, so she wants a little bit more like happiness and excitement in her life. And then the celestial vagabond, who's very like extroverted, so they have a kind of like introvert-extrovert dynamic between each other.
Wait, what actually did she wish for, though?
Kind of opposite attract thing. Sorry, I didn't catch that.
Sure, so what actually did she wish for?
What she wished for was to have some other person in her life that she could relate to and bring her some sort of happiness.
That's how she phrased the wish? I wish I can have somebody that I can relate to. Is it that she wishes for a friend? Because that's normally, most people would say, I wish I had a friend, right?
Oh, yeah, that would be more accurate to how she phrased the wish.
Okay, so was that her problem, that she was lonely before? And then, so what exactly was the problem? Like, I'm just trying to figure out those basic elements of, this was the problem, so she made this wish to try to fix the problem, right?
She felt very restrained and restricted by what her society and world was like, and she felt very isolated because she's the apprentice to the king and queen, who were essentially the rulers of this place, and she doesn't really have any friends because she's just working for them.
So is it a friend that she wants, or is she wishing for somebody to help her like break out of her shell, or somebody to like be a more popular, I don't know, somebody to make her popular? Or like, I'm just trying to figure out, I'm still on those essential elements here. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was still trying to figure that out too, but I'm kind of leaning toward having someone help her break out of her shell because of how isolated she is from other people.
Okay, so that's a little different from a friend, right? If it's somebody that has a specific job that they need to accomplish. So I think, and it's okay if you don't know, if you're not sure about any of this, you can always just say, I haven't figured it out yet, I'm not sure yet, or anything else. But I will say, so in wish-type stories, this genre is sometimes called out of the bottle, right? So in out of the bottle type stories, it's important for us to know what the character's problem is, and then what they'd wish in order to fix that problem, because usually there's going to be some little hook or irony within that, right? If it's going to be something like somebody who is super poor and desperate wishes that they were popular, right? So they, or not popular, wishes that they were wealthy. They become a king, right? Okay, that is the answer to their problem. But so in your case, just I would try to phrase it in really clear terms so we understand maybe something like your character that feels, I don't know, like she's not recognized enough or not popular enough, something like that. Maybe she wishes, hey, I wish I was popular. And the way that the universe answers that wish is by sending this person who then shows up and is like, hey, I'm going to help you become popular. That's like Wicked or whatever, right? Isn't it? But it's not. Wicked does not involve a wish. But but you know, the character that's supposed to help your hero become popular, something like that. So I would just be really clear as to what that problem actually is. You describe your character as reserved here. So a wish on a star summons a celestial vagabond, but I don't understand how a celestial vagabond is actually contributing to your main character's goal. So you'll want to probably let's start breaking it down in these terms here. So you have a reserved apprentice must keep her companion a secret from the kingdom's rulers who see his cosmic powers as evil. Okay, so start with the problem, though. So maybe something like when a lonely, depressed magician's apprentice wishes for the perfect friend. Does this make sense? So you can kind of start with the problem and then say, oh, this is addressing that problem. And then, a trouble, I don't know how you would describe this. You call him a celestial vagabond. I guess maybe we'd say something like, an extroverted angelic creature, or whatever. Let's just say angel for now. An extroverted angel shows up to help her become, etc., etc., etc. Something like that. So I think that we just need to understand the motivation a little bit more. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Okay, cool. So yeah, motivation. And then the other important elements of a logline are stakes and urgency. So we have the stakes here would be if your main character doesn't accomplish this goal, we kind of want to know what's going to happen or why this is important. So if, for instance, it's like, if you have some external thing that you can attach to that and say something like, this is why so many high school movies have like a prom at the end, right? Because they have a thing that we're building up to that your character's like, okay, that I have to accomplish that. I have to like do well at the prom, or I have to win the battle of the bands in order to be happy, right? So if it's something like your character, I don't know, there's a grand ball coming up, your character doesn't have anyone to go with. So maybe, for instance, like your genie character is going to help your main character, become the queen of the ball or whatever it is. Or that would be like the Cinderella version of it, wouldn't it? Or if you have some other just like specific task that the main character needs to accomplish, that would just help us a little more than just saying, well, if she doesn't do this, then she'll continue being kind of sad, right?
Yeah, I was thinking that it would be like if she fails in doing this, the rulers that she's apprenticing for will harness the celestial angel's power and end up taking it for themselves.
Oh, okay.
To destroy him.
That could work, but and in that case, I think you would still need a finish line for your main character, where it's like, yes, he's going to help her be more popular or well-liked or extroverted or anything else, but in order to do what? One kind of objective, I think, would be helpful to sort of focus the story a bit. And then last would be that sense of urgency, which you have right now. The urgency is kind of that the forces that be are circling in or zeroing in on our little ET guy. This is like ET, right? Where it's like we have the special friend, but the cops are trying to take the special friend away. Which is totally fine, but then
that is very
it's like the ET archetype, Stranger Things, like the magic friend that we don't want anyone to take the friend away. That's a totally valid
exactly
archetype. But in terms of urgency, so you have that ticking clock of they're getting closer to finding him. But if you had that finish line for the character as it was something like the Grand Wizard's Ball is coming up, and I just don't know how to make an impression or pass my test or do anything else, then we would have that added element of urgency as well. So I would just, in clarifying your main character's objective, I think we will find stronger motivation and ultimately stronger stakes.
Oh, great. That helps a ton, actually. Thank you so much.
Sure, no problem. Any questions?
No, I don't think I have any questions. I think that your advice is actually gonna really help with ironing out the issues with the log line, so thanks. That helps
Awesome.
a ton.
Perfect. Thanks so much for sharing.
Thank you so much for listening.
All right, let's keep going. We have Luke. Santicide.
Yeah, try to forget the other Santa logline. This is kind of its opposite.
Oh, lucky you, I've already completely forgotten it, so
Okay.
starting fresh. Go ahead.
When North Pole elf thugs steal everything from Earth's most generous toy maker, he wages a one-man war against elf kind to rebuild his business and avenge his murdered family.
Okay. All right, and this is an action comedy. When North Pole elf thugs.
Yeah, there's got to be a better way to say that.
Are all elves North Pole elves?
In the story, they are like the only elves we see in the story are elves that live at the North Pole. But the idea is kind of like Santa lives at the North Pole, and all of these elves are kind of like moving in and causing trouble, like Death Wish. It's got like racist overtones. So,
Does the movie take place all at the North Pole?
yes,
It does. Okay. I think that you...
it's like an urban North Pole setting.
Oh.
Do I need like an in a world where for that?
I guess not. You mean you're sort of envisioning that there's like a city there? Or this is like the
Yeah,
elf
like
city?
the elf village is kind of like an urban slum.
Okay. I don't think you need to explain that necessarily, but I was just wondering why North Pole elf thugs. When elf thugs steal... Because Santa lives in the North Pole. We all already know that.
Okay, so elf thugs works?
I think that's fine, yeah. So, or
Okay.
you could say, when criminal elves, maybe, steal everything from the Earth's most generous toy maker, he wages a one-man war against elf kind. But not against elf kind, was it?
Kind of.
Wait, so does he
I mean,
have elves that
Death
work
Wish.
for him?
This is kind of like a Santa origin story.
Oh.
It's their enemies at first, and then he has his like violent revenge, and then at the end, he's rebuilt their village or whatever and like subjugated them all in his toy factory.
Okay. Then that's what we would need to know, is that this is early days Santa that doesn't have elves working for him. This is the Santa Year One or whatever the Batman thing, or
Okay.
where so this is I'm not sure exactly the way to phrase this yet, but what you're sort of maybe even phrase it something instead of just saying the world's most generous toy maker, say something like a struggling young Saint Nicholas. You know what I mean?
All right.
Is he young? How old is he in the movie?
He's not young. Shit. When would this even take place? Is a good question.
I guess sort
That
of
all
like the.
Do I want crossbows or do I want rifles and stuff? Like what are we talking
I
about?
think I would get my assumption would be classic Christmas time as codified by Christmas Carol would be like mid 1800s.
That's really close to my other one, but I could go for that. Yeah.
It's up to you, really. I mean, it's a fantasy, so it doesn't
Yeah,
actually
I mean,
really matter.
If I want to go for the canon action movie kind of thing, it would really behoove me to set it in like a timeless 80s kind of setting, like
Okay.
like
You
it's
can
not
do that.
really a real timer place, but everything's sort of 80s coded.
Like the North Pole feels sort of like Miami or something, and you've got
Yeah,
like...
exactly.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead. That sounds fine. But the important part was that this is young Nick before... I mean, he may not be a kid, but he's younger than we know him normally to be, because this is early on in the timeline of the Nicholas stories, in whatever weird way. Okay,
Sure.
he wages a one-man war against elf kind. Okay, so that way I understand that he doesn't have elves on his side. To rebuild his business and avenge his murdered family. Oh, so they kill his family? When you say they steal everything, you mean they...
Yeah, I should probably just spell that out initially, rather than save that for the... yeah, basically it's very much like Death Wish, or it's a combination of a lot of things. They blow up his business, they kill his family, whatever, they shoot John Wick's dog, whatever it is. All of those things happen.
Okay, great. All right, so the rest of this I pretty much understand. I mean, so they steal his stuff, burn his house down, murder his family. Now, Santa Claus versus the evil elves. Is there anyone on his side?
I mean, I probably should give him like that officer character in Die Hard, who was on the comms, or somebody sort of supporting him remotely somehow.
Rudolph, perhaps.
Yeah, I mean, it could be like a
Frosty.
reindeer. Frosty the Snowman.
There's lots of choices.
What's now you're just making me think of like Escape to New York, and like Frosty the Snowman is the president and Santa has to rescue him. That's a third movie I've got to write now.
Would also be in this franchise, I imagine. Yeah.
Okay.
What happened to my camera? Whoa. Come on, focus. Focus. Sorry, go ahead. So yeah, the essentials I think I totally get. Just if there is another character here, I think we want to know how this is more. You say it's a one-man war in a place that we usually understand to be pretty uninhabited. So I just want to know what the movie is besides just Saint Nick by himself. Like, does he have anyone to talk to? Does he have anyone to work with?
How does it work in Death Wish? Is it the only people Charles Bronson talks to in Death Wish are people he like buys guns from, right?
I can't remember. I know he has. Are there cops that are investigating him? I can't remember.
I think so.
So yeah, maybe he is entirely kind of on his own, just in terms of allies. But there's other people he does have conversations with. Like, we just want to have your character interacting with other characters.
All right.
Especially if there's
a central. I'm not sure how to include that in the log line. I'll have to workshop which character he interacts with the most.
If you can, yeah, that's just often because
I think we spent too much time on mine.
That's okay. So let me just finish up, and I'll say, so yeah, the rest of it works pretty well. I totally get it. It's a simple set of comps. I get what the movie is, but the only thing I would say is if there is a central relationship, then that would help avoid the feeling of it sort of just being a little bit down the middle, right? Which is almost just like, oh no, this is your revenge movie, but in the North Pole. But if you tell us even like a little bit more, will help us understand what the hook is a little clearer. If there is a team up or a partnership, if it's like Santa and Frosty team up, or Santa and Mrs. Claus, or Santa and Rudolph, or someone like that, I think that would just help us sort of see the scenes a little bit more than just like a robot chicken sketch. Because right now I'm like, okay, it's a good robot chicken sketch, but where's the drama? Where's the movie? So you're very close, but if you can just bring out a central relationship, I think it would help. Or if maybe there's some other thing you can bring to the forefront. The central relationship might also be with the villain. So like, is there a main villain?
There's not really a main villain in Death Wish or like Invasion USA. It's more like a nebulous group that the hero has to fight against. There could be, but yeah, it needs something more sort of interpersonal drama stakes. I get it.
Yeah, I think you get it. Any questions?
So, none relevant, so I'll move on.
Okay, thanks so much for sharing. Santa Side, good title, by the way.
Oh,
all right, let's get Shakira with Perfect Shot.
What are you doing? So my title is Perfect Shot. The genre is drama, and the log line is when an awkward photographer not attract young people to his photography class, decides to pose as a gang member to earn their respect and introduce them to the arts. He runs into grave problems when real gang members realize he's not one of them. Comps is Boys in the Hood needs to serve love.
Okay, thanks for that. Let me just really quick look up what that is. To Serve with Love. That is from 1967. I have never heard of this one.
Yeah, from Sidney Poitier.
Okay. Maybe people know that one. I will just say I had to look it up, so if that means anything. Not that big a deal. Boys in the Hood, I know that one, of course. Okay, let's look at the logline again. So, when an awkward photographer cannot attract young people to his photography class, he decides... So, look out for the word... Don't use the word decides, usually, in a logline. He poses as a gang member. We can just skip it, right? So, he poses as a gang member to earn their respect and introduce them to the arts. Great. This should be one sentence if we can, but let me connect to the next clause. So, he runs into grave problems when the real gang members... Real gang members? Are the people that he was recruiting not real gang members?
So I guess, that's confusing. But basically, he starts off with young people that are not too into like the street, I guess we call it, and then he tries to move to like people that are really into gangs, and that's when he runs into problems, integrate from real gang members. When they realize he's not one of them.
So I guess I'm just wondering, why is posing as a gang member then the best way for him to introduce people to the arts if they themselves are not even into gangs?
I guess to just earn their respect, and he's like an awkward person, so just to kind of change his persona so that he can reach them.
So he kind of creates a persona as a cool, a cool alter ego for himself?
I don't think it's an alter ego. It was just something that's trying to fool the young people to and gain their respect so that they can listen to him. So I don't think it's an alter ego.
Is it someone that he's pretending that it's not him? So he's using a different name and claiming that this is a different person?
Yeah, so he would use a different name, but he knows who he is. He just is trying to fool them into believing he's another person so that he can kind of gain their respect.
Right, that's an alter ego. So an alter ego is just another identity that your character takes on. He's pretending to be this other person. It's not like he's I'm Jeff 2.0 who is now cool. He's saying I'm Jackson, a cool other guy. I'm not Jeff at all.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's maybe phrase it a little bit more in those terms. He creates a cool alter ego, or a cool gang member, or maybe even street artist would be the way to phrase this, or something like this. Because I guess if he's posing as a gang member who is trying to bring people into the world of art, I would almost think that he would have to be an artist himself, right?
Yeah, he is.
Okay. So he creates a cool street artist alter ego to earn their respect and introduce them to the arts. Great. I totally get it. He runs into grave problems when real gang members realize he is not one of them. So I think that you're saying that he keeps up the lie for a while, pretends to be this other guy, and then... Is he pretending to be part of a specific real gang?
Yeah, specific real gang, but maybe he wears the paraphernalia, and then they realize he's not a true person. So that's kind of how I wanted to, the issue would be.
I see. Yeah, no, for sure. So I get that his authenticity is now in question, and the stakes would be if his true identity is revealed, then the people that he's brought into the arts will then leave the program. Is that right?
Leave the program, but he's also not them, but people might be after him,
or might kill him. I guess is what you're suggesting. Yes, right?
Yeah.
Or hurt him or beat him up or whatever. Yeah. Okay, I get it. The way that I would put this is something. Well, first of all, make this one sentence.
Okay.
And I would even maybe think you could cut a little bit of the first clause here. Maybe something a little bit more like, when an awkward photographer creates a cool street artist alter ego to, bring more students to his class, or to win young people over, and I don't exactly know how to phrase it, so I'm just going to do a bad version, but I'll say something like, to win young people over and encourage them to join his photography or his class, whatever it is, then he must avoid XXX, or he must. We're just trying to keep it active, right? So he must like avoid or escape detection by the gang's real membership. ... If you want to kind of expand on it from there. Okay, so to that end, you may not need to spend as much time on the beginning. You may not need as many words in your opening sentence. If you start saying a guy does this to bring more students to his class, we would understand that he doesn't have enough students in his class.
Mm-hmm.
And that way you'll just kind of get a few more words to use, right? So we only have so many words you can use, but if you cut some from the beginning, I think you'll have plenty to do the rest of this in just one single sentence. Okay. Questions?
No. I think I feel like I have an idea. I think it's going to come, like more of the script is going to come to me as I start writing. But
cool. Thank you so much for sharing.
No problem. Thank you.
Okay, looks like we have two more. Nacho says maybe I can give this strategy a shot to get some more students in here. Yeah, maybe I'll create a sort of a cool alter ego and hit the streets. I don't know. Good work. Thanks for the idea, Chikira. Gabriel, we have envy. Yes, I hear you. Let me just turn up your volume.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, here we have your monster movie that we were talking about before. Looking forward to seeing how this has changed. Why don't you read out what you have for us?
Okay, for sure. The title is Envy. Is a body horror movie, feature movie, and the logline is: when a model-obsessed secretary becomes a grotesque monster, she must devour the model she invites before the transformation becomes complete. That's the logline. I think one thing that I really am struggling with is like before consequence, because I have been struggling a lot to create like the consequence, to add the consequence and the sense of urgency in the logline.
Mm-hmm. So she doesn't. So hang on. So at the beginning, if you say she becomes a monster, then you say she has to do this thing before the transformation completes. I guess she doesn't really become the monster. She just starts to.
Yeah.
Maybe you want to phrase this. Sorry. Something a little, because we had talked in the past in your consultation about how the transformations are triggered by her jealousy. Is that still the idea you want to go with here, or do you have a different idea for how this happens?
It's the same idea.
Same idea. Okay. So a model obsessed secretary starts turning into a grotesque monster every time she grows jealous. She must ... and maybe try to figure out how to complete it from there. She starts turning into or maybe like inherits a curse causing her to turn into a grotesque monster every time she grows jealous. Something like that, right? Just to help us understand that she isn't a monster already. She's started the long process of turning into one. And then you say she must devour the model she envies before the transformation completes. I think I understand the urgency of that. I do wonder how she knows that is what she's supposed to do would be the only thing. Do you have an answer for that yet, or are you still working on that?
I'm still working on that.
Okay. So I guess that's the one question we're left with. So how does she know this is what she must do? Meaning, like, is there a like Venom type personality to the curse or monster that she can talk to, which can explain the rules or something like that? So if whatever you can do to suggest how she knows what course of action to actually take, and that might just also help you build out, for instance, the central relationship, right? Because if the central relationship is with the monster itself, then we'd want to know that in the log line. So I would just expand on that aspect of it. It doesn't take a lot, just a couple words here or there, if you can, to help us understand either who is the person that she's paired with for this story, so central relationship, and then beyond that, how does she know what to do, or where is this objective coming from? Most people wouldn't really know right away that they have to indulge in the monster's urges to stop becoming the monster. That's a little unintuitive on its face, right?
Yeah.
So it's a little bit of a complicated idea, but I think that you can find a way to express all that. It might take just making a couple choices and figuring out what is the nature of the creature. Can she talk to it? If not, is there a handbook, or is there someone else she knows who's had this, that maybe that's the central relationship. So see if you can build out from there, and I think that'll give us the last few percent that we need. But this already, I understand the basics of it, and it's working pretty well.
Okay, thank you so much, Connor.
No problem. Do you have questions?
No.
Okay, great. Thanks, Gabriel. Okay, looks like we have one more. Teague with My Old Friend.
Hey, can you guys hear me?
I hear you fine. Yes. Why don't you read out what you have for us?
Sweet. All right. The title is My Old Friend. The genre is a coming-of-age story. I couldn't figure out a second genre that it relates to. The log line is that when she joins a school band, a confident, in quotations, guitar player must deal with her anxiety from her imaginary friend before her band kicks her out. And similar is A Silent Voice, The Breakfast Club, and Turning Red. Before we start with the figuring out how to fix this general thing, I have this habit of concept first, and then I try to write a story that best utilizes that concept. So for me, I came with this. Yeah. So for me, I had this concept where everyone's anxiety, social anxiety, whatever the anxiety is, it is really our imaginary friends that we've forgotten as we've grown older, and so the imaginary friends are incredibly angry about that, and so they take their revenge on us by taking the form of anxiety.
Sure. Give me just 1 second. I just need to tell something to somebody in the room that I'm in. I'll be right back.
Go ahead. So how was everyone's day? You're good.
Here we are. Hang on. Let me ask some questions. Did you say everybody in the world has this kind of imaginary friend anxiety thing, or just the main character?
It's a theory that everyone has. I fully believe that everyone has some form of anxiety. It's just different people have tolerance for it. But for the actual anxiety itself, I do believe it's for the sake of this story. I don't actively believe this. It's all just a concept. That all anxiety used to be our imaginary friend, but since we moved on and started making real friends, that it became enraged by that, so it's taking revenge by taking the form of anxiety.
And in your story world, everyone has these characters that they can interact with, or just your main character does?
No, just the main character interacts with.
Okay.
No one else can see it, because it's you have your no one can see your anxiety, so only you can see your anxiety / imaginary friend. Everyone else is just everyone else doesn't see it, except they only see their own anxiety.
So everyone does have this. Everyone does have their own imaginary friend.
Everyone has their own. Everyone has their own imaginary friend / anxiety, but they are the only ones that can see it.
Okay. So that's not even in the log line. That seems like a pretty big part of the story world. So you might even want to start if it's a radically different world. It's helpful to start in a world where ...
Okay.
Anxiety is personified as let's say imaginary friends. You can figure out exactly how you want to phrase this. It might just be helpful to spell out the essentials of the world if it works in a totally different way like that. If it's just your main character, then you don't need to. yeah, if your main character is the one exceptional one, you don't need to set up it's a different world, because the world works basically as we expect it to, except this one essential thing. Okay, let me. Go ahead.
I think the big thing in the story, I don't explore other people's anxieties. We just focus on main character's anxiety. So like that part of the world is not explored. Everyone else has it. It's just focused on the main character.
If that's the case, you might just want to leave that out then. There's if you, because it's sort of like what's it called? Did you see Inside Out?
I did, yes.
In Inside Out.
Oh, yes, that was the one I was trying to think of.
Yeah.
I was struggling with that.
So towards the end of the movie, we sort of show that every character has like the little people in their brain that are steering them around and being their emotions and stuff. But if I remember correctly, we aren't like constantly checking in with everyone's. So it's almost like a little fun Easter egg or not an Easter egg, but it's like a little fun. It's just like a gag at the end, basically. But it's not like a movie where where every character has a full cast of emotions in their heads. So we don't want to we don't want to make the audience think that it's going to be one of those. So in this case, I would not actually mention that. So let's just go back to the logline as you have it here. When she joins a school band, a confident guitar player must deal with her anxiety/former imaginary friend before her band kicks her out. So when you say she must deal with, what does that mean?
Worrying with anxiety, because the anxiety is trying to get revenge, and the way she's doing that is by preventing her from forming good and lasting relationships with friends. So it's kind of like she's like, let's say there's a scene where she's auditioned and she doesn't know if she make it. Her anxiety is like, yeah, you're totally not gonna make it. Why would you even audition? Like, they all think you're stupid now, sort of thing. And that kind of talk happens constantly throughout the movie. And occasionally the guitar player tries to ignore it. Another time she has full-blown conversations with it, or full-on yelling. So it's kind of like the back and forth where like the anxiety is always like in the room or just right by her ear, talking and whispering these things to her and doing everything everything that it can to get her to quit the band or do something stupid so that her band will kick her out.
Okay, so it's sort of like this. So when she joins a school band, a confident guitar player must find a way to defeat her severe anxiety, personified in her imaginary friend, before the band kicks her out. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. So that might be helpful, just because saying the friend/anxiety doesn't quite build the correct picture and just doesn't explain fully what it is that you're going for. So maybe some terms kind of like this, you don't have to use exactly this, but and then I guess also you're saying that the band would kick her out because the anxiety would cause her to perform poorly, and as a result of that, they would kick her out? Is that right?
Yeah, that's what I'm going for. Like I said, I haven't had the full story under my head, but definitely I think definitely one thing is that during a performance, she has a string of bad solos or bad performances. They eventually kick her out because of it.
And why is this particular band so important to her?
This is the first time she's ever had like a solid friend group. The way I see the character is that she has always had trouble making friends, i.e. why she had the imaginary friend. But then she joins the school band and suddenly I have friends now. I can hang out with them. That's when the imaginary friend absolutely loses it.
Okay.
Like, no, I'm your friend. I'm your friend. I should be the one friend. And then she starts getting mad.
So maybe something like this then. So when she finds her niche in the school, or when she joins the band that her crush is like the lead singer, or something like that. Do you see what I'm saying here? Where we just want to kind of it's more than just she joins a band. It's she joins her dream. Yeah. She joins a band with her dream friend group, or something like that. That we understand. Okay, that's why she'd want to keep that.
Yeah, the friend group should definitely be the main thing that she would lose. She couldn't care less about... I mean, she does love music, but to her finding a friend group that also has that same interest and love for music, it means the world to her.
Right. Okay, so yeah, it's not so much about the band as it is about the people in it. And now that she's joined this, she's found her place, and if the anxiety wins, then she's going to come off as weird to them and lose them. So,
Exactly.
the last question I have is, you listed Turning Red, and we were talking about Inside Out. Is there fantasy stuff going on here, or is this kind of just like a
No.
extended metaphor?
No, it was one of those things where I was trying to figure out the right comp for it. I'm like, I think Turning Red is something, but I don't know, so I just put it down. But like Inside Out was what I was looking for, so not really Turning Red. There's no fantasy aspect to it.
There's not. Okay, yeah. So Inside Out,
Yeah.
it is probably a good choice for better comp then, because
Yeah.
although it's a metaphor or
That's
whatever,
much better.
they aren't like little magic
Yeah.
people.
Well, yeah, it's a lot better.
Okay, cool. I don't know what a silent voice is, so that maybe
It's an
that's
anime that I watched. An anime that I watched had a cool filmmaking effect where the main character couldn't look anyone in the eye, and so all the other characters' eyes had X's over them. So it was really cool.
Okay, I wouldn't expect an American reader to know it, probably. So if you were just to cut down to two, I would say these two probably are the ones to go with.
Yep.
Or maybe
Okay,
there's
yeah,
even
I
a
will-
better than Breakfast Club. Maybe there are recent coming-of-age high school-type movies that involve music, something like Sing Street, or there's a couple more.
Ooh.
What's the one? It's about like metalheads in high school. I think it was like one of the Avengers directors that did it, if I remember correctly. Somebody can let me know in the chat if they can find it. But there might be just a more recent comp than Breakfast Club.
Yeah, I haven't watched a lot of coming of age stories recently, mainly because I get secondhand embarrassment watching them. So we can start looking at.
Okay, sure, yeah. Maybe if you can
Yeah.
find one that involves music, because Breakfast Club isn't really about music.
Yeah.
Then that might just I'm sure there is something, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Okay, besides that, I think I get it now that I've asked you these questions and explained it and kind of clarified. This is not a supernatural kind of scenario. It's just we are watching a kind of manifestation of your character's anxiety, and we're watching it. She's kind of grappling with it in a metaphorical way. So I totally get it.
Yes.
And once you make these little changes here and maybe just narrow down your comps a little bit, then I think you'll be in good shape. Do you have any questions?
No. Thank you so much for helping out.
No worries. Thanks for sharing.
Thank you.
Okay, so was that all of them? I don't see any others. If I missed you, let me know now. But I think that was all the log lines in the chats. And so that gives us some time to go through more of the slideshow. And I would be continuing to modify and adjust your log lines based on the feedback that you got in this session today, because you want to try to get this down by the end of the weekend, if at all possible. You want to try to make these choices early and just know what it is that you'll be writing for the next 7 weeks. So, again, the template: when or after inciting incident, an adjective protagonist must conflict before or else stakes. Keep at it and make those changes, and if you feel like you want to get one more look at it, then you can share again by the end of class, or tomorrow at lab, which is from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. Pacific time. Okay, so let's give some quick feedback, or show you some suggestions or ideas for other log lines. And then, since we just did feedback on log lines, I'll probably move ahead into more ideas on premise and why this story, why is premise important, and the difference between high concept and execution dependence. A little bit about titles and characters, and then we will have just open FAQA session towards the end. So I'll just skip ahead and tell you that for next time, your goal is to finalize your logline. So this is for all of you who have just gotten your feedback, and now you're like, do I have to watch the rest of the class? Well, I would recommend that you finalize the logline by the end of the weekend. If you're working on a rewrite, you want to collect your feedback and get that in your notes document by the end of the weekend as well. And you will have to actually get those reads done. I would recommend maybe doing a swap or a reading, something like that, if you need to find that extra voice to give you that feedback. Using your logline as that compass to help guide you, you can fill out the rest of your sketchbook. The sketchbook is never really concluded or finished. There's not like a real end goal for this. You'll be continuing to add stuff to it and change stuff in it all throughout the writing and even the rewriting process. So it's a useful document that will just grow and grow and grow, and probably will max out around 30 to 50 pages by the end, depending on how much you include. And last, your objective is to read a pro script from the blacklist Ideally something related to the project or in the same sort of genre or story world as your project. It doesn't absolutely have to be, and it can just be any pro script at all. It could even be something from Before the Blacklist or something you found on your own, online, or anything else, but we do have a directory that we will link in the chats, which you can use to find a huge list of scripts. If you need access to that directory, if you click on the link, you should get it within a day. And there are plenty in there to choose from. Make sure you find the numbers on the documents and find the one numbered 0. 0 is the guide document for each year's folder. So if you open the directory, you'll be able to see the loglines of every script that's on there, as well as the writers, managers, and other representation info. And use that to build a queue for yourself of things to read. And you should be reading, I say, 3 scripts a week. Minimum 1, like 1 is the sort of bare minimum. In every class in the bootcamp, we do ask, what have you been reading lately? Ideally, you're paying attention, taking notes, and you can give us just a couple things you've liked, noticed, or learned. You don't have to love everything, and if you don't like a script, it's okay. You can still notice and learn things from it. And I would be taking notes as you go, especially if you are struggling with elements of structure, to be writing down on the pages themselves, whether it's printed out or it's a PDF. Mark out, where are the act breaks, where's the midpoint, where's the all is lost, where's the escalation, and be labeling the pages as you go through them. It's just a really good way to start to cement those in your mind really clearly, so you have you can start to build that really intuitive understanding of structure, and by the end we'll kind of know it like the back of your hand. So these 3 things are the main objectives for our next week's class, which is going to be next Friday, the 8th, from 6 to 8 p.m., running all the way through to the end of January, which is, you'll be finishing the script around the 26th of January. So that's for next time. Let's go ahead and finish up with premise stuff for today, and then we will take last questions and wrap up. So, premise. Let's get back to this very essential idea. We just shared loglines, which are an expression of premise, because a logline is the one-sentence expression of the premise, a written expression of the premise, although you are obviously able to speak the logline out loud if you want to. So, included in the premise is the main character, the world, the conflict, the antagonistic force or the obstacles that your character is up against, time frame, and also the hook of your story, which should become apparent. A hook is not just one thing. There's not an answer to saying, this is clearly the hook. There's not always just one element to the hook. A hook is a combination of a few things, which makes your story feel different and unique, and like it's even for fans of the genre that have seen a million movies like that, they will say, I have to check this one out because of this unique element. This is the premise is the core heart of your story, and it kind of folds out into a couple different, it's like an origami star or whatever, and that it starts out bigger and you can fold it smaller and smaller and smaller. But the sort of simplest expression of your premise is the logline, or I guess the even simpler than that, the 0 level expression of your premise is, hey, want to check out a horror movie about an octopus? And that's just kind of like you say, it's a blank movie about blank. You want to check out a spy movie about a hang-gliding assassin? Just that very, very simple, almost like we'd call like the elevator pitch level expression of the idea. And then beyond that, the next step up is the logline. So if you hook somebody with, you want to check out a horror movie about a giant octopus, then they will say, oh, okay, yes, I do. Give me the logline for that. So you have now that you've given us the logline and also the elevator pitch, we know who is this about? What are they trying to accomplish? What is difficult about the task? Where are the motivation, stakes, and urgency coming from? And ultimately, what is kind of the appeal of the story? Who would like this? And also, beyond that, who would have the ability or interest in making something like this are all essential objectives that the logline is going on to accomplish. We're really trying to answer this question, what is it about, in as few words as we can. So, when we ask the question, why this story, it's not that every movie has to have some amazingly socially conscious, relevant reason for existing. We're sort of asking, like, you can have one, both, or any combination of these two answers that you want. But ideally, your story is going to be some combination of universally relevant and also relevant, especially today. Not everything's going to feel like this, but you want, in an ideal world, your story centers around ideas that are baked into human nature and primal and elemental themes of love and death and friendship and experiences that transcend time or location. I think if you look back at certain stories, like, for instance, old Twilight Zone episodes, almost every early Twilight Zone episode was focused on both of these things, right? Something that is universally relevant, something like the struggle to survive, or how do people connect with each other or find love, or anything else like this that you could drop in the medieval era, or in 100 years in the future, and people will relate to similarly. but then you find something within modern discourse, society, conversation, or the world that we live in now that kind of brings out that theme and amplifies that theme and interacts with that theme and actually makes it feel like, oh yeah, people are always struggling to survive or struggling to connect or things like this, but this is how it looks nowadays. These are the unique struggles that people have doing this sort of thing today. So you're trying to find some middle ground between these. Ideally, your story kind of touches on both because universally relevant themes are pretty easy to identify. There are things that are at the heart of the human experience. There's not that, it's a pretty finite list in some ways. There's like 10 or so things that everybody in the world wants and can relate to. And then there's an almost unlimited list of things that are relevant today that you can find as avenues to express the kind of unique appeal of your universal idea. So ideally your movie feels like if you have adequate motivation and stakes, then it will probably feel universally relevant because it wouldn't feel motivated or like the stakes were high enough if it weren't. So chances are, just by checking the basic boxes of your movie working, it will feel to some extent universally relevant. But if you can also go on to make it feel especially relevant now, say something like, I don't know, if we're going to do a movie about a dating app that kills you or something like that, right? In the kind of horror thriller world, that might be an interesting take or approach on a universally relevant theme. How do people find love or connect with something that is relevant now or that is in the sort of public conversation or consciousness? So you see a lot of that sort of stuff in horror thriller, which is often trying to capture some element of what it means to be alive today. Also comedy. Comedy really, really thrives on this element of something that is especially relevant today, which would be new material to make jokes about that people wouldn't necessarily have seen as much about before. And it's also stuff that people are just thinking about, which means that we're more likely to not only watch stuff about that, but also to enjoy or to connect with media that is about things that we are already talking or thinking about. What else? So why is premise important? So the premise is the main criteria by which people judge if they want to read your work, more so than the expression in the logline. If somebody likes the idea of a horror movie about a giant octopus enough, and your logline is bad, they might say, okay, I might read that if you take a stab at rewriting it. Or maybe I would want to read that premise from somebody else. If somebody else has an awesome logline for that same basic idea, I would love to read that. Which is where you're going to run into trouble at times, considering you can't really copyright an idea. If you pitch a movie about a giant squid at a studio and they're like, we love a movie about a giant squid, but we don't like yours, they're just going to buy it from somebody else or commission another writer to write a movie about a giant squid. So premise often also implies a genre, so it's telling us who would want to watch this, or else who would have the inclination or ability to make something like this. So it's important in just you sharing this script with other people. This sort of tells us why are you choosing them to share it with, and how are you going to interest and bring them into your story in a way that makes them feel like their time won't be wasted, and they will be rewarded for giving you their attention and hard work, because it's not a small amount of work to read and mark up a script. It takes hours sometimes. I did a consultation or a script markup this last weekend that took 5 hours just to read and mark up a script. So it's a significant investment of their time that we need to then reward by saying that they are in competent hands, that we're going to build their confidence high and keep it high without damaging it with the many things that you can do to damage confidence. Sort of imagine that every read has an invisible confidence meter attached to it, like a health bar in a video game, except instead of your character gets hit with a sword and their health goes down, it's, well, you had a typo in your first line. That's a pretty big hit in your confidence, right? You don't have any comps for your movie. Okay, that's another hit on the confidence. Your formatting is way off. That's another big hit from the confidence. And it's possible to knock your confidence down to 0 on the first page if you aren't careful. So you want to really make it feel like a document that has been combed through 100 times and meticulously improved by a professional who knows what they're doing and who can guide me on an interesting emotional experience within 90 to 120 pages that will make me feel something and will not throw me off the ride, confuse me, or frustrate me. It's a tall order. It's not easy to write a movie that will please a reader all the way throughout. And even if you really nail it, they will still have notes. So get used to this idea that this is like almost impossible to write what people consider to be a perfect movie that receives no notes. Stronger premises, though, are considered more marketable, more likely to be read, more likely to be produced, and simply more likely to become profitable movies. Excuse me. it's a barometer for the quality of the script. Just like a strong logline is more likely to just be a good movie. Well, people ask, why do I have to get good at writing loglines? And it's to build and create that sense of confidence that the movie will be good so that the person actually reads it, or that I'm able to share it with people that are more important, that will read it and be able to help me get more out of that script. For instance, if your logline is amazing, then it might go right from the assistant to their boss, right? A quicker, direct route towards getting what you want by ensuring that you have a strong premise off the bat. So, premise, important. Logline, important. Comps, not that important, but you should still kind of have them because they help us assess your goals and intentions for the project and tell what is it that you were trying to make here. And title is probably the least important, but it does make a really nice bow on top of the whole high concept package because the title often goes on to clarify the hook of the story. In any case, you want to use your premise as this North Star, as this compass to help guide your construction of the rest of the story, and really make it feel like this is going to be the sentence that you keep or the logline will be the sentence that you keep coming back to anytime you feel lost or distracted or like you don't know what this is anymore. Then you will always have your early pre-writing work that you've done on just the title, genre, comps, and logline, which will help you remember what this was supposed to be. High concept versus execution dependent. So high concept does not mean more complicated. A lot of people seem to think it does. And it means there's more going on, there's more characters, there's more complex ideas. It doesn't mean any of that. High concept means high reliance on concept to sell the movie. It has nothing to do with the genre, budget, or subject matter. You can have a high concept movie about a guy trying to get a candy bar from a vending machine. You can have a high concept movie about the War of 1812, right? Which, by the way, where's all the movies about the War of 1812? Somebody get on that. And the high concept premise is going to be engaging and self-contained. It's going to have broad appeal, and it blooms in the mind, as we say, to suggest a conflict structure and essentially kind of the whole movie. You can see some titles here that are posters here of very high concept premises. Shanghai Noon. When the royal guard of a Chinese princess ends up having to come to the Old West to rescue her, he teams up with a cowboy to do it, right? So it's as simple as high noon plus Shanghai. This plus that is at the core of high concept. If we can express your idea as it's this with that flavor, and it's as simple as that, and your audience goes, oh, I can see it, I get it. In this case, we're doing Jackie Chan Kung Fu movie, but set in a Western. It makes for a perfect, effortless high concept pitch. These other ones aren't as necessarily this meets that as that first one. That's kind of like the gold standard example of it's this plus that, right? We mentioned Inception earlier, which, well, a very complicated movie. It is sort of like, oh, it's a spy heist type story, but in a world where we have sci-fi dream technology, right? So this plus that. We don't always have this plus that. We could say The Ring. What is this plus that for The Ring? Well, it's kind of when a journalist is investigating a videotape that kills you when you watch it. Okay, so that tells us that at the very basics, also essential to this premise is it kills you in 7 days, right? So the pitch for The Ring is a journalist has 7 days to figure out where an evil videotape came from, using the images in the tape as clues, or else she will die. Easy. Elemental, primal stakes, motivation, urgency, it's all there. And just a couple words, and just within that one sentence, we understand who is this about? What are they trying to do? Why is it difficult? Why is it interesting? How is it touching on the basic emotional appeal that your genre has? Does it sound scary if it's a horror movie, or funny if it's a comedy? How about a comedy? Yesterday, it's about a struggling musician that he gets hit by a bus, and when he wakes up, something has happened in the world in that cosmic moment where the bus hit him to cause no one to remember the Beatles anymore. So he goes about trying to recreate the Beatles' entire discography and get famous as a result. Cool, right? A guy wakes up in a world where there's no Beatles. He decides to become the Beatles. Liar Liar is about Jim Carrey's character is a lawyer who lies all the time. His son makes a birthday wish that for one day his dad won't be able to tell a lie, and now he has to win the biggest court case of his career. Okay, easy, simple stakes. Career success versus family is very obviously going to be at the heart of the themes of that story. It's when blank happens to main character, they must blank before blank. It's as simple as that. So high concept is going to... It's not a strict requirement for this course, and it's not a strict requirement to write anything. Let's look at what the opposite is, which is execution dependent, and then maybe you'll understand why high concept is important. Execution dependent means that it relies on, or there is not a high reliance on the concept to sell the movie, right? It relies instead on complex character study, fantastic cinematography, or fight scenes, or other strengths, or musical numbers, or anything else, right, that relate more to the artistic execution of a production. If you say something like, this is going to be a musical about the life of Julius Caesar that goes through all the major hits of his life, starts with his birth and ends with his death, that sounds like a very down-the-middle, not that exciting biopic, and it would be considered very execution dependent, which means that it would depend on how you specifically, you, a director, or, executive producers or whoever on the team of this movie collaborates to put it together, what their unique expression of that idea would be. Think of something like John Wick, right, which is kind of one of the better examples because it just sounds like such a straightforward, down-the-middle assassin movie. It sounds like every other Hitman movie, when his family gets killed, or in this case, it's his dog, but in most cases, it's the main character's wife or child, right? When their wife or child gets killed, an assassin comes out of retirement to take down the bad guys that killed them or harmed the main character, and then they go on to try to take down the whole organization. So it sounds very down the middle, and it is very execution dependent. But I hope to list this one just to sort of convey the idea that execution dependent does not mean bad, in the same way that high concept does not mean good. We are expressing the type of idea that this is, and moreover describing the entire package in such a way that a potential buyer would understand. Does this have high reliance on concept to communicate or to ultimately sell the idea? So you can write an execution-dependent movie if you really want to. Just understand that it becomes very difficult to give feedback to these at the early stages, because if all you have is, well, it's a musical about Julius Caesar, then I'm not really able to assess things like the motivation, stakes, and urgency quite as well. We don't really know what the hook is as clearly, and we're missing some of that other basic info that just makes it easy to provide that feedback in the early stages. So I recommend and will always guide you towards high concept, just because being able to write high concept stories is really key to being able to work in Hollywood as a creative in general, or at least, if nothing else, to recognize high concept stories when you see them, and to understand this difference and know that when you see a movie idea, you pretty much have a sense of, would there be a broad audience for this, or would there not be? In general, high concept stories have a broader audience than execution dependent ones. But then again, you can also see on this other side, something like Lord of the Rings or Pulp Fiction are pretty execution dependent as well. Also extremely popular, very well done movies. Or Whiplash is another great example where it's like, it's kind of about a drummer that wants to be the best drummer. He's in college and he has a mean teacher. There's not a ton there that makes it really sound like it has a strong hook to it, and it does very much depend on the writing and performances. But once those are there, once those are in place, and if you are a director, then it becomes much easier to actually write and execute execution-dependent ideas, because if you are executing it yourself, then you can show the world that that idea works. I think I already went over comps. Let's just go over this last idea of originality, and then I will open to QA, then we will wrap up for today. So, has it been done already? You can ask this question at the early stage of almost any project you're working on. Has it been done? It's not that relevant or important to worry about this, especially if you're in the early stages where you're trying to learn how you organize a 100-page script, how to just do the basics. You don't really have to worry about writing blindingly original things, because no one's going to be buying your movies or listening to your pitches regardless. But if you get to the point where you're building out your portfolio and you want to start to adjust your ideas to feel more like, these would help me get my career started in some way, then you can start to ask questions like this. Has it been done recently within the last 10 years? Longer for certain iconic stuff? Has it been done with high quality or popularity? Or has it been done with the same take, meaning the same style, approach, or point of view? If only one of those is a yes, then you're probably fine. So for instance, it was high quality and popular, but it was a long time ago, and you have a different approach. That would be fine. Maybe it was done recently, within the last 10 years, but it was done pretty poorly, nobody liked it, and you have a different take or style. That would work too. or maybe it's something that has been done in the same style as you, but it was a long time ago and it wasn't that well done. Maybe you'll be able to use this little cheat sheet to assess, well, is this something that would be considered original-ish or not? You do ultimately have to think there's not really an original idea. Everything's been done and repackaged and repurposed a million times. There's like 600 Spider-Man movies and 6,000 Dracula movies, so you don't have to worry that much about this. And even if the script is not that original, but it's fantastically written, you can still get good results from that, get interesting attention from that. So should not be your first priority, but at some point you will want to start to consider how the originality of your idea will start to factor into people's evaluations of it. Right now it isn't a factor, but at some point it will be. So if you want to start learning what makes original ideas, try to use this little checklist and always ask these 3 questions. If only one of them is true or 0 of them are true, then you're totally fine. If 2 or more are true, maybe find a different idea. Okay, titles, not that important. In general, they're a useful tool in the last piece of the sort of high concept premise. They explain why this movie is hooky or ironic, or even think of something like Child's Play, right? Okay, it's about a killer doll. We're sort of suggesting with the title that this is a childish or immature thing, right? But you can easily see on the cover of the movie, he's got like a knife or whatever, right? So that's the juxtaposition of these 2 elements. That's this meets that. That's the high concept pitch for this movie. We have a talking doll story meets a serial killer movie combined into one. So a title is a tool to get somebody to read your work. It's not ultimately always going to be up to you, or it might change before release or any other number of things that can happen to it. But beyond that, titles can comment on or reframe the events of the story to add some new perspective on them or to hint at some kind of theme. If you have a movie about a serial killer, but it's called something like, I don't know, The Righteous Hero, then even if that never comes up in the movie, it sort of is framing it in a certain way, right? Like it might be sort of suggesting that your main character sees himself as some kind of righteous hero, despite the fact that he's a murderer. Or ultimately, maybe your character becomes that righteous hero, or maybe the cop that they're fighting against ultimately has to become this righteous hero in order to save the day. So we might ask questions like, I wonder how that title applies or what that means, which can be used to build some mystery as long as you don't overdo it. In any case, you are often using the title to comment on or frame the events of the story, or to express what is the high concept hook at the base of this. There's a lot of ways you can do the title. You don't have to worry that much about this. I'm not going to talk blockbuster moments right now or characters. I want to take a last look at any touched up loglines, and then we will open to QA. Does anyone have changes they've made to their logline that they want another look at before we do QA? Raven has changed hers a little. I'm glad to take a look if you paste it in. Or did you edit the comment? So if you haven't shared it yet, then make sure you copy and paste that. There it is. All right. I'm going to take a look at this, then we'll open to QA. Let me bring Raven back on stage. All right, Starstruck, logline number 2. Are you there, Raven?
Oh, yeah, I was just seeing if I wanted to make a quick adjustment to the last line.
Oh, okay.
Or to the last part of it.
It's not too late if you want to change something right now.
Okay, yeah, I'm going to change something real quick.
Okay. And then when you're ready, go ahead and read it out loud.
Okay.
Are you still there?
Yep. Okay, now it's good.
Okay. So I'll paste that one in.
Oh yeah, sorry, I forgot to hit enter, but
okay.
now I hit enter to change it.
Alrighty, read it out for us.
Okay, the new logline is after an embodiment of the stars is summoned by a wish, a sheltered apprentice must keep her new companion a secret from the kingdom's rulers before the kingdom falls into chaos from her interactions with forbidden magic.
This sounds like we're actually drifting a little bit away from a simple, coherent... This sounds almost like another conflict. Are you saying the forbidden magic is making the Star Wish?
Yeah.
It is. Okay. So, again, start with the problem. Start with your main character making the wish. It's not your... It's kind of obfuscating who's actually making the wish if you just say, is summoned by a wish. That could be anyone, right? So, start with when a... Here's the adjective that expresses main character's problem. Protagonist wishes on a star, or whatever, wishes for a blank. She summons a interesting character and must protect him from X before X. Try something a little like that. If we don't quite know how everything connects yet, then I think just mentioning the forbidden magic makes us... It feels a little ambiguous, right? It almost sounds like you're saying that's something else happening, when I think that was referring to the same idea that you mentioned in the first line. So try a little...
Yeah, I definitely get that.
Okay, so I'll paste that into the chat if you want to use that template.
Oh, yes, that would be perfect.
Sure. You can change it a little. It doesn't have to be exactly like that. But we want to understand when, I don't know, an ugly duckling wishes he was beautiful, then a angel comes to help give him tips on how to do that, and he must defend the angel from the duck king, or whatever, right? I've gone too far with my ugly duckling comparison. But, express the problem. So then we'll see how the wish is actually addressing the main character's problem, and you'll mention the... I'd like that you... See, it's, I think, more relevant... I like how you have mentioned that he's an embodiment of the stars. That does clarify what he is. But if you said something more like an extroverted, or like a life of the party genie, something like that. I understand he's not a genie. But that just tells us a bit more about the character's personality rather than just what he is. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that totally makes sense. It's like a focus on the character's personality, and it's something that the logline reader automatically knows about the character rather than just what he is.
Yeah, you're totally right. So if you can... Here, let me just make those two little notes. 1, start with the problem. 2, if you can describe angel/genie guy in simple terms that showcase his personality, then we'll kind of be able to start to imagine the fun scenes that we'll have in the movie, and how these different personalities might interact. It sounds like you're sort of saying that she's quiet, reserved, and introverted, so she makes the perfect friend to help her break out of that shell. So we want to see both of those characters sort of described in those terms. When an introverted magician does this, she summons a extroverted magic guy. Something a little bit like that, so we understand that, okay, this is an answer to her prayer or to her wish, and I can see how this will contribute to her objective, but also cause problems along the way. And that'll help us envision the fun and games of the middle of the story.
Yeah.
Questions?
Yeah, that helps a ton, actually.
Okay, you're getting there. You're pretty close. I think you'll have it totally down within the next day or so.
Yay! Thank you so much.
Okay, thanks, Raven. And feel free to bring it to lab if you want to get it one more look at it on Saturday.
Great, will do.
Thanks a lot. Okay, we have 5 minutes. I'm just going to open to QA on anything we've talked about today. Who has questions? Looks like Luke might not have a question, but has an updated logline. Hi, Luke.
Hello.
All right, let's look at the updates.
Is there any way I can say anything but young? I dislike a young Santa Claus. but I think everything else is kind of there that we talked about.
Well, the nice thing is that if it's a character we know, then Young actually does tell us a bit, right? Because we know what Santa Claus's personality is sort of supposed to be. So saying that he's young actually does the important job of placing us in the timeline of his life somehow. Let's look at the whole... Why don't you read the sentence for us?
When elf thugs steal everything from an up-and-coming toy maker, a young Santa Claus wages a one-man war to avenge his murdered family and protect his neighborhood.
Oh, protect his neighborhood. A young Santa
Hopefully
Claus.
that implies sort of who he's interacting with in the story, and he's kind of... Because looking at Death Wish, Charles Bronson is kind of like the patriarchal, like, granddad of the neighborhood, and all the neighbors sort of come to him for help in their darkest hour.
Mm-hmm.
So...
But here, it almost... So does this still take place at the North Pole?
It's like a North Pole city.
Right. But since we don't know that the North Pole has neighborhoods, right? Normally we see this, and it's like
so
a
I got
workshop.
to name drop the North Pole.
Well, here's what you could do. I mean, you could say, and protect the North Pole city where they live if you want to, or you could just say, protect the capital of the North Pole. There might be like different ways to express this. I mean, the essentials seem to be the revenge story. So, and again, you are saying steal everything when I think usually we'd start with the most important thing, right? When elf thugs murder his family, no?
All right, that's totally fair.
I understand that you're kind of saying they take everything from him, meaning his family too, but just in the name of reducing ambiguity, when elf thugs murder his family, a young Santa Claus wages a one-man war to avenge them. And then I think you have a space for a few more words here if you want to express that this is not how we normally think of the North Pole. This is like a metropolis or you see this as like a modern urban American type city. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. So maybe you could use words that kind of help build that picture. Like I just mentioned metropolis. You don't have to use that, but something that just says
kind of like the Polar Express version of the North Pole meets 80s Miami in an action movie.
Right. Protect the North Pole city he calls home. Something like that. Okay. Who lives in the city if not elves?
Well, I changed it sort of to where elves kind of live in the city too.
They do. Okay. So we're not waging a war on elf kind anymore.
Yeah, I've kind of that's a bit too over the line maybe. So I've kind of dialed that down a notch.
Okay. So there's good elves, and the bad elves are the ones that cause the problem.
It still has racist overtones, though. Don't get me wrong. Like the idea of a bunch of elves moving into the neighborhood and causing trouble for the nice elves that already live there.
A lot of this in that whole series, didn't it? Not the wokest movies ever made. Anyway, so I think this is working well. Elf thugs murder his family. Young Santa Claus wages a war against them. I just changed this to protect the North Pole city he calls home. If you find that silly or dumb, then you can change that to whatever you want, obviously. But
I can work with that. I mean, I can tweak it a little bit, but it's clarity is important.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think this is a lot more clear.
Yeah, it's simpler. It's clear. I think you're in good shape here. If you have that central relationship, then it would still be nice. But if you don't, if you're not sure yet or need more time on it, or you just feel really that there's no one that he is primarily interacting with or hanging out with, then you can find a way to make it work without.
Yeah, maybe not just one person, but multiple groups of people.
Sure.
Or like families or whatever. Just he's the urban messiah, essentially.
Okay, he must unite the warring elf tribes, whatever it is. So must unite, must lead, must enlist, words like that.
It's more like protecting the nice elves that live in the nice neighborhood from all the shitty elves that are invading from elsewhere and causing problems.
Makes sense. Okay. So
yeah, but
I think
it's pretty clear enough, I think.
Okay, yeah. So just from what I've given you here, I think you're really close. Just keep fiddling it with it for one more day. I'm sure you'll get right where you're going.
Yep. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Luke.
And I've already got ideas for scenes.
I thought you were going to say sequels for some reason.
No. I have some good scenes in mind.
Perfect. All right, put them in the sketchbook.
Yep. Way ahead of you.
All right, thanks a lot. So that's the end of our time. Thank you guys so much for coming to week 1 of this feature bootcamp. As a reminder of your goal for next time, it is to finalize that logline. If you want more feedback, tomorrow 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. in the lab is the best place to come and ask those questions. Keep using that logline as a compass and fill out the rest of your sketchbook with ideas for scenes, characters, dialogue, anything else. Read a proscript from beginning to end and come to next class ready to discuss what you read and what you thought of it. It's not a quiz. You just need to kind of tell us what you liked, noticed, and learned. Next class is going to be Friday, 6 to 8 p.m. If you will still need to join, you can do that at scriptcamp.net. So after today, the classes will be for members. So go to our website, scroll down to Enroll Now, and you can sign up for unlimited membership or sign up for yearly to save 40%. We have Pilot Bootcamp, Sundays 10 to noon. Novels, Saturdays 12 to 2. And Lab is from 4 to 6. All right, thanks so much for coming by, guys. We hope to see you soon for your next Script Camp class or event. And in the meantime, if you need more feedback, we have plenty of user channels for that. So check the feedback channel. You can post in there, or you can post in anything that you see on the left-hand side of your Discord window. You can post and share in there to get more ideas, questions, or discussion before next week's class if you need. Thanks so much. We hope to see you next time. Have a great